Nick Saban's interested in getting back into coaching. Could the Oklahoma Sooners make sense?
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Go download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase over at Game Time. Coming to you live from the College Football Hall of Fame. We're standing right here under the great Dewey Selman, all of his great memorabilia here. But we got to talk about this because yesterday, Greg McElroy, the former Alabama quarterback, does radio work in Alabama, still really well connected with the Crimson Tide, mentioned that Nick Saban might be thinking about getting back into coaching or still interested in getting back into coaching, Jay.
John, is this an indication he's going to try to take the Oklahoma job?
Listen, that's going to be part of the discussion unless Oklahoma has a big season. If they lose to Auburn, immediately that will start being the discussion.
It is. And it's funny because I saw one of our counterparts at Locked On, Hogs, he actually had someone ask him the question if Saban was going to Arkansas with, John Calipari, which Arkansas is spending a lot of money on coaches right now. So I totally understand the sentiment in the question. But at the same time, John, doesn't make any sense to me for Nick Saban to come back, especially with how involved he is at Alabama. But it does beg the question, what job would Nick Saban take if it became available next year?
Well, it's blue bloods. Just run down any of the blue bloods that are going to have any kind of coaching questions. If Ryan Day, if they have a struggle at Ohio State, if they lose to Michigan again, that could be one of those that he's back on the hot seat, even though he just won a national title. Oklahoma, if the season doesn't go like we hope it's going to go, Brent Venables is going to be on the hot seat for 2025, and that's a name that's going to come up. But look across the college football landscape. USC, I don't think he'd want to venture outside of the SEC, but a challenge like USC might be something that the coach would want to have. Coaches want to coach. Doesn't matter how old you get. Doesn't matter what job you've got. ESPN College Game Day, he looks like he's having a lot of fun with Pat McAfee and those guys. But coaches want to coach. That's what their DNA is all about. And Nick Saban's been out of the game for just a year, but that itch is hard to scratch.
It really is. And I don't see Nick Saban. First off, I thought it was kind of a ridiculous notion when it was brought up to begin with. But, of course, we've got to talk about it because it's very intriguing.
People are talking about it.
The idea of Nick Saban saying, I actually do want to get back to coaching, and him getting the blessings from Ms. Terry to be able to come back and doing it. It's kind of a fascinating notion because don't get it twisted. He's going to have to get the blessings of Ms. Terry because that is a very large undertaking for him to do that again. Yep. So, to me, I think it's ridiculous, the idea of him actually coming back. But at the same time, the speculation of where he would end up coaching, to me, is very fascinating. And on the list, you have to throw Oklahoma on there if you're going to keep saying that Brent Venables is on the hot seat.
Right.
I don't think he's on the hot seat enough. I do believe he's going to get his 5 years. I've been on record saying it constantly. So, a Nick Saban opportunity to come here is very low. Yeah. But at the same time, John, it's not ridiculous.
It's not. There's anything that's possible is possible, and this is one of those situations where Brent Venables has to have a good year.
Yep.
People are talking about this being potentially the best team he's had at Oklahoma. We've talked about how maybe the schedule isn't as difficult as a lot of people want to make it out to be. And now all he has to go is win. That's it. Just go win football games, and that'll silence any of the noise. But he's not going to be the only one under pressure. I talked about USC. I talked about Ohio State. But look at LSU and Brian Kelly. People are not happy with the performance that Brian Kelly has had with the Tigers. Billy Napier in Florida, that's another guy that's very much on the hot seat. And how much patience are they going to have at those two programs or at Oklahoma if they're not getting the results that are expected at some of these big-time programs if Nick Saban's sitting there saying, I want to come coach?
If there's a place that I could see in the SEC, I can definitely see an LSU. I could see a Florida. It always cracks me up about LSU because all their coaches always find a way to win a national championship since 2000, and then they just either go to the pros, which Nick Saban did,
right,
or they fizzle away, into weirdness. It's like an odd situation, but Saban going back to LSU, it would be intriguing because I could totally see it. They still like him because he didn't leave on bad terms. No. He left to be ambitious with his career,
Right.
and it just did not end the way
Right.
that they wanted him to stay there forever. And so you actually still hear people give him love when he comes to visit. So I'm guessing, John, that one, Florida's probably the most intriguing out of everybody on there because so many people want Billy Napier fired. Even our guy over at Locked On Gators, he's been on that train for a while. And if they don't win, even though, again, like us, they have one of the nation's toughest schedules, if he doesn't survive it, that job's going to be open. So then at that point, is Florida something that makes sense for Nick Saban and his family, especially with all of the car dealerships that he has in the state of Florida?
I think it's one that makes a lot of sense. It's easy to recruit to a place like Florida. It's got a great, legacy and tradition and brand and a great fan base that's going to rally around a guy like Nick Saban to come to Gainesville. Auburn, would that be one of those? Would he troll Bama fans by going across the Iron Bowl?
Oh, no. I will refute that. I will refute that. I will refute that in any capacity. It ain't happening. Miss Terry is a celebrity.
What do you take on a challenge of something like Kentucky? If Mark Stoops were to not have the season that he needs to have to sustain his job, would Kentucky be a place that he'd be up for a challenge? He has his legacy. His legacy is cemented. There's nothing that's going to change that Nick Saban is one of the greatest college football coaches of all time. He can afford to go to a place like a Kentucky that is going to spend, if they got the right guy, and try to build a program.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. But the other thing is he's going to go somewhere that's going to be financially backing his program with NIL. Of course, rev share is going to be a part of it, but NIL is going to be heavy for him. So if there's any jobs that make sense on the landscape of jobs that's going to be open from Arkansas all the way across to Florida, I get why people ask the question about Arkansas. They did heavily invest in Calipari, and they're putting together they're basically all of the Waltons are putting money into
Arkansas is not going to lack for any kind of money, any kind of financial resources that they want to spend on whatever sport it is. We saw how quickly they were able to turn around that Arkansas softball program, or not really turn it around, but elevate it to national contender status. Arkansas basketball is going to be on the rise as well, and you listen to our guy John Neighbors over at Locked On Razorbacks, and it sounds like a lot of the fan base are just absolutely fed up with the mediocrity that is taking place in Fayetteville.
Yeah.
Nick Saban would completely change the direction and trajectory of that program if he were to land with the Razorbacks, if that's something that is even on the table. But getting back to Oklahoma for a second, the only thing that makes sense about a connection to Oklahoma is if Brent Venables again, and Oklahoma doesn't have the season that we expect them to have. We expect them to have big years. We expect Brent Venables to coach himself out the hot seat. We're not concerned about the future of the program here.
Not at all.
We think they're going to have a good year. But Jim Nagy, that is a potential piece that makes a Nick Saban to Oklahoma thing make sense.
Massive,
capitalized,
massive,
bolded, italicized, all of it.
Yeah.
Big if. Having a general manager that's going to manage the NIL aspect that takes all of that off of Nick Saban's table, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and you're not going to see Alabama let go of Kalen DeBoer as much as fans may potentially want that to happen if Nick Saban decides to come back. Nick's not in the business to go in and kick people out of their offices. He walked out of that office. He has it separate, and he did that on purpose. So I don't see that portion happening, but I could totally understand that Saban would be looking at the landscape of general managers and saying, who would I want to work with? Mm-hmm. Who would I want to have my back and help me with doing what I do? I can totally see that also because he is considered right now one of the best in the game, especially after what he's done at the Senior Bowl. So makes sense, but there's a big if there. We're telling y'all, we don't see any of this happening. We just think it's a fascinating topic because now it sounds like he could possibly make a decision.
This is just one of those fun topics you're going to have a conversation with your buddies at the bar, at the dinner table, whatever. Finally here, I feel like there's not a lot of programs other than the ones we've discussed that make a whole lot of sense because they've got established coaches. Texas A&M, Mike Elko just got there. South Carolina, they're content with Shane Beamer. You look at Georgia, obviously Kirby Smart. And then you think about Nick Saban and what he's seeing his good buddy Bill Belichick do. Like Bill Belichick got back into the game, went to the collegiate level, and is having some recruiting success at North Carolina. Been a lot of buzz about some other things, but eventually it's just going to come down to coaching football. And again, it's really, really, really hard to scratch that itch if you have a coaching mindset.
This would be the funniest thing, though, is that Nick Saban's like going to go to the NFL. And he's really just trolling everybody with talking to Greg McElroy and his people about him coming back to coaching. They just ends up at the NFL, which I could totally see him doing that for like 5 more years and just be like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah, Nick Saban goes to the Patriots and then starts a new dynasty with New England.
Gosh.
And that's going to do it here from the College Football Hall of Fame for Locked On Sooners. Jay Smith, follow him at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, on YouTube. You can follow me at John 9 Williams and read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. Check this place out, man. We're going to have some shots from all over the College Football Hall of Fame. This place is awesome. So much great memorabilia. Again, we got the Dewey Selman memorabilia right here. Great letter jackets, helmets, game-worn stuff. We got the trophy down here of the Selman brothers and the footballs. Just so much fantastic memorabilia. If you're into that kind of thing, if you hit Atlanta up at all, you got to come check out the College Football Hall of Fame. Again, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Free and available on all podcast platforms. But until next time, he's Jay. I'm John. Boomer
Sooner.